Maxie, I've been thinking, should we do season 3 on the Dr. Joe show? You sure? You sure it's a good idea? That's what I'm talking about. Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show. I'm Joe, and today is going to be dedicated completely to viewer emails and comments, particularly those in regard to questions about cigar storage and aging cigars. For the past 6 weeks, we have been releasing week after week episodes all about storing and aging cigars. And quite a few questions have come up, both in the comments section and in my inbox. So I figured now would be a great time to share with all of you some of these questions that people have been asking. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, viewer comments and emails. Well, first of all, let me get this out of the way. Several people have been asking, what am I smoking? Over the last few episodes, during the aging series we've been doing, I've been smoking these unbanded cigars. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about them. They are private stock from Finest Cuban Cigars. They're not available yet. The owner of Finest Cuban Cigars sent me a few to try, and he's thinking about possibly putting them up for sale on the website. This is not a house blend. This is a private stock, a cigar that he has made for himself to smoke all the time. Because let me tell you, if you smoke cigars, like the way we do, it can be very easy to just burn up all your profits, I'll tell you that. Thank God I don't own a vendor, because, I don't know, I'd be in trouble, man. So he has his own cigars made, and they are 100% Cuban tobacco, and they are very good. They're very, very good, There also will be a house blend. See, I don't know the details yet exactly, so I don't want to say anything that's, that you say, oh, you said this. No. It's quite possible that there may be a house blend and a private stock, kind of a value brand house blend and a slightly more expensive private stock. Or there may just be a private stock. I'm not really sure yet. There are 2 different blends right now, both of which I've tried. Both are very good. Let me just show you something real quick. As far as this is a Finest Cuban, same one I'm smoking here. This is a Finest Cuban Cigars house blend. And what a beautifully made cigar. The whole thing, it's packed perfectly. It's cut at the foot perfectly, beautifully straight. It's capped perfectly. Really, really nice looking cigar. Show it off over here for a minute. I hope my camera can catch it. In comparison, these are, and this is why I hardly ever buy house blend cigars online, Cuban house blend cigars anyway, because you never know what you're going to get. These are 2 house blend cigars from a Canadian site that somebody sent me through a while ago. Actually, it was in a bag that I pulled out during one of these episodes a while ago. And you can see that, let's just look at this one here. This thing looks like shit. It really just looks like shit. Never mind the wrapper unfurling there. I'm not even going to judge it by that. But look at the shape of the fucking head there. Look at that. What the fuck? It looks like they were trying to make a chisel. But they weren't, because this one is more even, but it's still just like, it's all crooked. It's got spaces in it that are underfilled. The wrapper, the quality of the wrap. I mean, look at the wrapper leaf. It's blotchy. It's pale. You know, and it doesn't smell like anything. And in comparison, you have this beautiful, oily, dark, perfectly straight, very well made. You could tell whoever rolled this really took their time and has experience. You know, a little of both perhaps. It's just a very, very well made cigar. Smells great. Very, very Cuban-esque at the wrapper. Woody, nutty, toasty at the foot. And I'm smoking one right now, again, and what surprises me is how different they are, because there are several different formats that they plan on coming out with, and they're very different. You know, some are big, fat, short 60 ring gauge cigars, you know, likely targeted at, you know, the American market. People over here, we like our nubs, we like our big ring gauges. And then you have a lot of standard shapes, some Churchill shapes, some Toro shapes, even a few pyramid shapes thrown in there. Short ones, long ones. There are about at least a dozen different sizes. So who knows? Who knows? Hopefully they'll come out soon. Hopefully you'll get to try them. I'm not going to rate it or anything. Not now anyway. I will possibly rate them once they're up for sale. But for now, I'm just trying them out. They were gifted to me. You know, I ordered some of my summer selection. And we all know the owner over at Finest Cuban Cigars. Bill was very happy to see that I'm back. As far as ordering, I don't do much ordering over the winter. And as a little inclusion, he sent me a batch of these private stock cigars. So I've been enjoying them, you know, and what I like most, beside the fact that they're very good and I can really sit down and actually just enjoy smoking them, that they give me something to smoke other than the cigars I bought, so I'm not breaking into my boxes right away. You know, some of the boxes are very young right now. Hey, they get younger and younger every year, guys, and it's, you know, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. People ask me where to get aged cigars. Very difficult. A few sites, extremely expensive, you know. It's just really not happening right now. All the aged cigars, as far as, you know, whenever you used to buy standard production cigars from any site out there, you used to get a box 2-3 years on it, you know, maybe more, maybe a little less, but vendors had aged inventory. And even though they didn't sell it as aged inventory, I would get boxes I ordered just from standard production, and they would come and they'd be near vintage, sometimes over vintage. And then some vendors did have aged inventories. Many had aged inventories when I first started doing this, and now most don't. You know, all the aged cigars have been sold up, and all the younger cigars are getting sold up. People are running out of stock. It's just, more and more people are ordering online every day. Viewer comments. You know, I've always wondered, Ozdemir, I think, right? Hakan Ozdemir. Again, you know, if I pronounce anybody's name wrong, sorry. I try. Hey Joe, superb review, my friend. Thank you for sharing such good and valuable knowledge you have gained from years of experience and from intensive research. I should say that I have a cigar oasis which doesn't pump, but it has a fan to push vaporized humidity. I have also started using beads in my Winador as you suggested, which looks to be working better. I plugged the drain hole and set it up in a way to drip back into the bead tray. You know, thank you very much for the compliments. We have not done our Winador episode yet, so I won't say too much about that, but I will say this. If you're building your Winador, the heartfelt beads really do work great. I found that using a combination of heartfelt beads and Boveda bags works great. Reason being is the heartfelt beads last indefinitely. Boveda bags do not, but Boveda bags can, in a way, be recharged. It's interesting, and the beads seem to recharge the Boveda bags when you refill them with a lot of water. It's interesting, and we'll talk more about it when we get to the Winador. Basically, I'm trying to work on something that gets the thing to run for a long time without having to change anything. And I'm working on using different combinations of things. Now, some people like to use devices, electronic devices like Cigar Oasis, for instance. You know, it sounds great. Electronic humidification sounds great in a sense that, well, if it's electronic and it's plugged in, I won't have to do anything for a long time, but that's not true. If the setup isn't correct, you know, first of all, Hakan here had a setup where the drain hole wasn't plugged because of condensation. The dew point is very important for people who are setting up winadors in warmer climates to understand the dew point. And you'll get condensation, especially around the area where the cold plate is, which is located by the fan. Not the bottom of the winador where the drain hole is, as some people think. It's not there. It's by the fan, and that's why you're getting condensation in that area, because that is the coldest spot in the winador. Now, with the drain hole open, this Cigar Oasis device was running out of humidity every 2 weeks. Well, that's no good. That means you got to go refill the thing. You know, he said pump, rather, it doesn't pump, rather it blows humidity via, it has a fan to push vaporized humidity. Right, I used the word pump. I shouldn't have used that word. It doesn't pump as in, say, a tank full of distilled water that pumps jets of humidity out. It doesn't work like that. It actually has a big foam block, just like just like the Prometheus, just like a hydration unit you put in a regular desktop humidor. Which means it's really no different than a hydration unit you put in a desktop humidor, except for the fact that it has a fan to assist in pushing this humidity out of the thing. But it can only make so much humidity, you know? Eventually that sponge dries up and it needs to be refilled. So I don't mess with them in my winador. I have found a fantastic combination of beads and Boveda bags that has kept the thing running and running and running and running and running and running without having to change or refill a thing. So we'll get to that when we do the winador episode. But Hakan, I'm glad your situation is better. Yes, I told you to plug the drain hole. That's a must. You have to plug the drain hole. You're not going to have a hole in a desktop humidor. You don't want a hole in your winador. It's just going to be an area where humidity can escape. Now, the problem is when you have condensation. And here's another thing. Something happens when you have the winador set up, so you create a channel, say, from the fan to the tray where you have your beads because of the condensation, and you're trying to have that water drip back down into the beads, which sounds like a great idea because in essence it's replenishing your beads. There's a problem with that, though. There's a problem with that. These beads cannot sit in a pool of water, and if you have too much condensation coming out and too much water dripping back down, that's what you're going to have. You're going to have your beads loaded with way too much water. The beads are registered at certain percentages, 65, 68, 70, to release that much humidity. If the beads are loaded with a ton of water, they seem, and this is funny, they seem to get confused. And I've witnessed this in my winador, where after a while condensation built up down at the bottom of the winador. The beads were completely loaded. They were fine. There was water sitting down in the channels that I had to wipe out, but all of a sudden humidity started dropping. Humidity started dropping, and I'm saying to myself, how the fuck is humidity dropping if there's water in here? I cleaned out the water, put the beads back in, shut it up, waited a day, humidity started coming back up. It seems that, and they do, these beads will suck up excess humidity, being that the beads are at the bottom, and the water that from the condensation drips back down sits at the bottom. The beads start thinking, holy shit, it's too humid in here. Thinking, you know. The beads start acting as if, oh my god, there's 100% humidity, I gotta start sucking up. And they start pulling everything back in. It's very interesting the way all of this works. But we'll, like I said, we'll get into that more once we do our Wine-A-Door episode. But again, glad things are working out better for you. Michael Pellegrini. Hey Joe, great show. Touched on a lot of important topics. You're definitely right about Wine-A-Door storage capacity. I will get another down the road just for aging that I hardly open. The summer is coming and it gets hot with very low RH. I'll see how it goes regarding condensation. A bit worried there, time will tell. Thanks again for the info. Look forward to the next one. Thank you, Michael. Well, again, going back to our last comment, if it's really hot where you are and you don't have air conditioning and it's just say your house is like 75 degrees or above, yeah, your Wine-A-Door is going to have condensation. It's going to be something you have to deal with. You're going to have to figure it out. Boveda bags, and this is why I've chosen to go with a combination of beads and Boveda bags. Boveda bags react to this production of condensation much more efficiently than the beads. This is what I've witnessed. The bags start to swell, which means they're absorbing this water. Condensation pulling up at the bottom of my Wine-A-Door is much less to none. It's going somewhere. When I only had beads in there, it wasn't going anywhere. Now I have Boveda bags in there, and those bags are swelling up. And what that means is the condensation is being absorbed, which is a great thing. The bags are swelling up, which means they're being replenished with this condensation, which in a way creates what we talked about before, equilibrium. Equilibrium. If condensation continues, bags swell up, condensation stops. Let's say it's a cooler day, bags start releasing. It's a fine line, but I believe with the right amount of beads and the right amount of bags, we can find an equilibrium that can last God knows how long, only affected by the rise and decline of temperature. Temperature plays the biggest part in all of this. So that will really determine if you're in an area where the temperature is constant, say a tropical environment, a tropical climate where it's basically constant. This may be feasible. We'll figure it out later. But yeah, you're going to have to deal with it, Michael. That's just part of the deal. Another idea I've had regarding condensation is to build a channel and a tube through the drain hole. And what I mean by this is, just like you people have been building a channel under the fan to catch the condensation to run it back into the bead tray. Instead, build that same channel that funnels into, well, a funnel with a tube attached to that funnel that runs through the drain hole into whatever, a drip pan of some kind. And then seal the drain hole around that tube. Okay? Because of the difference of air pressure and, well, what we talked about, vapor pressure. Because of the difference in vapor pressure inside and outside the humidor, the tube will act like this, will act the same way as a siphon does. When you put water in a siphon and you have it bent, and it goes like this, right? It goes like this. In fact, the water itself will plug it. Okay, here's the idea, and then we'll move on. Let's say you channel the water down to the point of a funnel into a tube. The tube goes through the drain hole. Around that tube and in the drain hole, you put some silicone-based sealer. So the area around the tube is sealed, no air can escape. The tube goes under the humidor, out the drain hole, under the Wine-A-Door, and then you bend it into a loop. It runs back up all the way to the top. You clamp it or tape it or whatever to the back of the Wine-A-Door. So it's not ugly, no one will see it. What's going to happen is the condensation will drip into the tube, and once it gets to that point in the loop, it can't keep going up. The air is going to hold it there. Okay? So the thing is, you have to, be careful that it doesn't overflow. You have to kind of keep an eye on it, and after a while you judge, well, how long does it take to fill up this entire tube? and then you just bend the tube and empty the thing out. Now that's one solution. The other one is to have the tube lay flat into a drip pan on the outside, you know. So that could work too. That could work too. But the idea is to keep some water in the tube so that the water itself seals it and stops humidity from escaping. But I believe even if the tube is drained, even if the water is running out, a difference in air pressure outside and inside probably prevent most humidity from escaping through that tube. Anyway, some ideas, some theoretical architecture, Wine-A-Door architecture, but we shall see when we get to our Wine-A-Door episode. Mark Tracy, excellent series. Couldn't have come at a better time for me as I'm currently buying boxes of Cubans for aging and smoking, of course. I want to thank you, Dr. Joe, for recommending finestcubancigars.com to me. I couldn't be happier after my third shipment now. I've listened to all the rest, and now I just listen to the best. Oh, well, thank you very much. Thanks again for all the useful information and wonderful videos. Keep on producing. I will. Keep on smoking. That's great to hear. I love the outfit, you know. I think they're absolutely fantastic. For me, personally, I really believe in establishing a great relationship with your supplier, you know, and Finest Cuban Cigars, see, I have faith in them, you know. Right now, they're very popular. Inventory is down a little, but they're getting some shipments in. I know they're going to come back up, and not only that, but they're trying to get more specialty cigars in. I think they're going to be great, you know. I like good service. I demand good service, you know, and Bill has gone out of his way on several occasions to obtain things for me that are, you know, just are out of the ordinary, you know, and he has done so for other customers as well. You know, you become a good client with them, you know, they really believe in taking care of their customers. You know, I can't make any promises as far as, yeah, he'll get you whatever you need, this and that. Some things, you know, whatever, but they will try. They will try. So, I'm glad you like them, Mark, but I'm not surprised. Mitch Rogers, Joe, another great video. What's on tap for the next Cuban review? Actually, Joya de Monterrey. Great video on humidity. I have two Wine-A-Doors, well, a lot of Wine-A-Doors. One for aging and one for smoking, but they're getting violently full. Again, going back to Michael Pellegrini's statement when he said, I forgot all about that, you're definitely right about Wine-A-Door capacity. I've told people again and again, they are not as big as they look. The biggest Wine-A-Doors can only hold about 20 boxes, you know, and even that may be pushing it. And when I say biggest, I mean the biggest thermoelectric model wine cooler cabinets, because that's why the size is limited. You'll see 27 bottle, you know, the New Era 181 and 181E, 181 and 180, very, very popular models. I'm sorry, 281. The 280 and 281E. Two of the most popular Wine-A-Door cabinet models out there. They are 27 bottle coolers because they're meant to hold wine. The biggest they make, I believe, is 32, but, you know, they just can't make them bigger because the thermoelectric cooling won't work on something that large, and you cannot use a compressor-based Wine-A-Door. You just can't, all right? For people asking me, well, what if I do this? What if I vacuum seal my cigars before I put them in? Look, go for it. go for it. And get back to us and let us know what happened. But I'm telling you, not a good idea. You don't put cigars in the refrigerator because, you know, look, if it was that easy, we'd all be using refrigerators to store our cigars. They're tremendous. They would be perfect. They have tons of room inside. They have great cooling capacity. You know, but the problem is they're compressor-based. They'll wreak havoc on your cigars. So you can't use a compressor. You're stuck using thermoelectric models, and thermoelectric models are just generally smaller. So, be warned. Yes, a Wine-A-Door will only cost you about $500 to build, but after 20 boxes or so, you'll be building another one. You know, which is why, personally, I'm starting to look into the realm of large-scale wall cabinets. You know, we'll see where that goes. So, violently full winadors, because I have a need for boxes. Well, don't we all? I just use Cigar Oasis. Don't have to check or fill it up for about 5 or 6 months. Well, that sounds good. Here and there, tap a button if I want it a little higher or lower, but I generally like my humidity and temperature around 64 to 66, maybe 68 for the smoking one. Speaking of smoking, my cigar journey just hit a milestone. Was in Mexico and smoked an Edmundo Dantes 54. Best cigar I've smoked thus far. Very famous cigar. Wish I had a box. Should have bought them when they came out. Didn't. Very depressed. What can I say? Edmundo Dantes. 20, 30 years from now, people will look back and that will go down as one of the most famous cigars in history around this time. Around all of the cigars that were released during, you know, this era. Because this will be looked on as an era. Just like there was a cigar boom, I believe, you know, people who study cigar history and look back will call this, well, what I called it, the aging boom, or the vendor boom, or the Cuban cigar boom, or the ordering fucking Cuban cigars online boom. But whatever they call it, something is happening. You know, it's growing, it's exciting, and it's big. And trust me when I tell you, it is. Because I've been doing this for over a decade, you know, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't see it slowing down at all. In fact, I see it speeding up. Not only that, but now the embargo hangs on a thread. You know, things are going to happen. Congratulations on smoking that cigar. It is a beauty. And interesting about the Cigar Oasis, perhaps you could give us a little more info on your build. How exactly, because every little bit makes a difference. Where do you have the Cigar Oasis? You know, is it close to the fan? Is it at the bottom? Is it at the top? Did you put an extra fan in your winador? Did you do anything special? Blah, 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 blah. I personally don't believe in extra fans, especially if you're using a Cigar Oasis because it has a fan. And the idea is not to blow air on your cigars. The idea is not you need more oxygen. Bullshit. Okay? The idea of a fan is just to gently move the air around so it doesn't sit and stagnate in one place. Gently. Gently. You don't need to blow air up from the... You just don't need it. You don't need it. And if you're saying, oh, my humidity at top is not as high because... well, then something's wrong, because I've built a winador and I've proven myself that you can have humidity at the top just as high as you have it at the bottom without any extra fans. The fan the 280 and 281 winador cabinets come with is perfectly sufficient for moving air, and you just don't need an extra one. So, let us know about your setup. Interested to hear it. Steve Ortiz. Great episode. Keep them coming. I have one question, Joe. And by the way, all these great episodes, this was one aging episode or another, the one on relative. You can find the comments online, but all of these are on the aging episodes, unless I say otherwise. Great episode. Keep them coming. I have one question, Joe. What about the myth of plumage, a type of fine dust, a dust-like covering that develops supposedly when cigars are kept in the proper humidity and temperature for long periods of time? Is 63%, 65 degrees that proper number to achieve this so-called effect of plumage? Okay, first of all, it's not a myth. There is such a thing as plume. I really love the way you described it to me, in case I didn't know. A type of fine dust-like covering that develops supposedly... Well, yes, it is a type of fine dust-like covering, not to be confused with mold, okay? Mold can be white, and white mold is harmless. Cigars in tubes, especially stored for a long time in a humidor, develop mold. You know, little white patches, you know. But plume doesn't really develop in patches. Plume develops throughout the cigar. And it doesn't, you know, white, yeah, it's almost like a milky, translucent. Sometimes it can be very crystalline. It's not fuzzy. and it doesn't easily wipe off, and it doesn't appear in blotches. It's fairly consistent. Okay, what does plume look like? Well, remember when we did our humidor episode, we pulled an Opus X out of the box, out of the Daniel Marshall, and that cigar had taken on a wonderful, wonderful coat of plume on its surface. The cigar itself was pliable. You could say definitely perfectly smokable, soft, nice, kept in great conditions for a long time. The wrapper had become thicker feeling and hard and kind of sharp, almost akin to the aged wrappers you find on the Padron 1926 series or the Family Reserve series. Those wrappers are much harder and thicker than the wrappers you see on the 1964 series. Why is that? Well, those leaves were aged longer, and they take on a much thicker, denser character to them. You can also see, if you look at Padrones, especially the Maduros in the 1926 series, a lot of little flashy crystals staring back at you. That's plume. Now, during the production process, because the tobacco was aged before it was turned into cigars, the stuff that gets on these leaves, a lot of it is wiped off, or when the leaves are re-wet and everything, but you could see a lot of these little crystals left behind. The Opus X cigar we pulled out of the box is a perfect example of what plume looks like. You'll know it when you see it. The thing is this, you ask, is 63, 65 proper condition? Sure. But not always. Not all cigars will develop this. A lot of it has to do with the oil content of the cigars. You know, oils migrate to the surface of the wrapper. You know, and this is why you want cigars in clusters, because they migrate to the surface and then they go to the surface of other nearby cigars and start working their way back inward. And oils literally flow throughout the cigars over long periods of time, creating balance and consistency. That oil can harden once it reaches the surface and forms crystals and, you know, a white, milky looking type of substance. But not all cigars will develop plume. There's no way of knowing which cigars will develop plume. Apparently Opus X will. Okay, so Opus X, and like we said, the cigar right next to it was very dark and super oily, and that oil hadn't really dried as much yet and hadn't taken on a plumy surface. But what the oil does is very different from what the cigar in its entirety is doing, because the cigar was not hard. The cigar was not dry. The cigar was perfect, okay? But you had that really nice coat. So that's what plume is. It doesn't necessarily mean a cigar is better or not. It's just an effect. It's just something that happens during the aging process. Occasionally, you know, when you take your boxes of cigars and you put them away for years and years and years, you're going to take them out, let's say 10 years later. It takes a while. You don't get plume after a year. You don't get plume after 2 years, you know. 5 years, maybe. 10 years, cigars aging properly that will develop plume should develop plume. But cigars, not all cigars do, you know. Darker cigars do more often, maybe. I don't know. You know, it's really based on the blend and the oil content of the tobacco in question. So, but it's not a myth. Plume is not a myth. The plume is not a myth. Not a myth like all Cuban cigar cedar inserts need a corner notch cut. Bullshit. That's just complete bullshit. You know, so whoever put that on the internet years ago, thanks for causing everyone out there so much fucking trouble. It's simply not true. That being said, did you ask anything else? Yeah, 63%, 65 degrees is perfect. In fact, that's what I prefer. That's what I store my cigars at. 63 degrees, 65% humidity. You know, humidity range recommended is between 65 and 70. For aging, I like 65. You know, because it gives it some room. You know, if it spikes up a little, 64 to 66, okay. But if you're keeping it at 70 and it spikes, now you're at 72, that's just too wet, you know. And as far as temperature goes, temperature can go down to 55, no problem. You know, temperature is a funny thing. The problem is how temperature affects humidity when it drops that low or when it gets higher. That's what you have to watch. You know, so temperature can technically go anywhere between 65 and 55 and 70, technically. But before you jump on me, please watch the other aging episodes where I talk about this, where I talk about the Olivas and how he stores his cigars and all sorts of things like that. I don't just pull these numbers out of my ass. Okay, so 63 happens to be an average, you know, the middle ground of what Habanos SA recommends, you know. So it's just I like the way my cigars feel at that temperature. I like the ease of maintenance, the ease of sustaining humidity at that temperature, you know. So I recommend that. But that storage does not guarantee that you're going to get plume. Then again, it's not something to aim for. You know, you're not saying all my cigars have to have plume. It's just something that happens. So, John Kim, great episode. I don't have a desktop humidor, but I store my cigars in a Zycar travel humidor with Boveda Humipacks, 69%. Do you think it is safe to store cigars in a travel Zycar humidor? Sure. Why not? No problem. You know, I don't know how many cigars you're talking about. I have the 10 count case. You could store 10 cigars in there, and but I mean, you're going to be opening it. You're going to be smoking cigars out of there. You're not going to use it just to store 10 cigars for 10 years. I mean, that would be kind of ridiculous. But with a Boveda pack, yeah, maybe you're worried that it's a small environment. Is the pack too big, too much? No, not at all. You can use a big 69 Boveda pack in that airtight Zycar Travel Humidor. Fine, as long as it's not exceeding temperatures of 70 degrees. If you're leaving it in the car and the car gets to 80 degrees in the sun, or your house is hot, keep it in a cool place. That's what's going to kill it or make it okay. It's the temperature, okay? So, me personally, in that 10 count humidor, if I smoke from it often, I would keep a 69 pack. If you're talking about, you know, you're not the type of person who smokes cigars, you know, every day. You smoke maybe one a month, one every 2 months, and you like keeping a selection of 10 of your favorite cigars around. You don't open that case that much. Use a 65 pack. You know, a little bit better, unless you like your cigars really soft. And again, lower temperatures, much better. So that's that story. Let's move on. Tom F. Great episode, Joe. I recently bought a prefab winter unit that came with 2 drawers and 4 shelves. It's a 2.5 cubic feet unit, and I'm using 2 pounds of beads for humidification. 1 pound in 2 empty open PSD4 10 count boxes on the bottom, under the bottom drawer, and the other pound in 2 mesh bags, one at the top and one in the middle. Sounds good. I mean, you have them dispersed very nicely. You know, I was thinking about doing that. My only concern is with the wet beads sitting in a wooden box right on the wood. You know, mold can sometimes grow on wood. It will grow on mold. Cigar boxes stored improperly at high temperatures and high humidity, you know, but being that it's cooled and it's distilled water, and the temperature is not going to go above 70, you know, you'd probably be safe. I use a plastic plate. I may try that. It actually sounds like a pretty good idea. So you have a lot of boxes in there. The only problem is I can't fit an SLB between the shelves or the drawers. If I want to put any kind of cabinet boxes in there, I would need to remove at least 1 shelf. That's why I opted for the New Air 281 cabinet, and we'll see when I do the Wine Door episode exactly what I'm talking about. The 280, its brother, there's, you know, one is black, the 280 is black, the 281 has a silver metal front. And to tell you the truth, I kind of wanted to go with the black, but there's another difference. The way the racks are laid out and how many notches you have for those racks. The 280 has 6 and the 281 has 12. They're spaced, you know, every inch and a half instead of every 3 inches or so. So you can organize your shelves in such a fashion where you can put larger boxes in there. I have a Ramon Allone's 50 cabinet in there at the top without losing too much space. You know, see, that's the problem. If you remove a shelf, then you can fit an SLB, but there's not quite enough room to put anything on top of it in that little space that you lost. You know, and that's what happens with the 280. So I went with the 281. But thanks for watching. Thanks again for all the great information you impart, and keep on smoking. You too, my friend. You too. Let's see. Snook Ajab. Love the Dr. Joe show and love the aging discussion. I usually just put a box away and try to forget about it, but you got me thinking about this dress box of H. Upmann half Coronas I just got from 2013. I tried one and decided they need more time. I have an empty Connoisseur No. 1 SLB cabinet and thought maybe they could age more beautifully if I moved them in there. Ever tried these type of tactics? I don't generally do that. I mean, I keep cigars in the boxes they come in. However, there's nothing wrong with doing this. A cigar box is a cigar box, but not always. A cabinet box is wood inside and out. With a dress box, you have a lot of paper. And there is something about paper when it comes to long-term aging, you know. I have come across dress boxes that have a really intense mildewy type of smell to them. You know, old cigars, a box of La Gloria Cubana Taínos that are absolutely out of this world, but the dress box they're in, you know, smells like an old sock. And this can happen even if they're stored at proper humidity and proper temperatures. The paper over time just, you know, can't handle that type of humidity, and after a while you can get that odor. You know, it's not that bad. It doesn't bother me. But as far as aging more beautifully, again, cigars in cabinet boxes take longer to age. However, slower is better, and you have a group of cigars in a bundle where more of them are touching, you know, so you have a really nice migration of oils and all of that, whereas in a dress box you have a layer straight across, separated by a cedar divider with another layer straight across. So it's a different layout. How much of a difference will it make over time? Well, the only way to tell is to take two of the same boxes from the same year, from the same factory, and keep one in the original and put one in the dress box and see what happens. And even then, you don't particularly know if, you know, every box of cigars can age differently. You know, so when that much time is involved, there are so many factors that can attribute to either a good box or bad box in the end. You just don't know. By the way, Snook Ajab, now is a good time to show this, sent me a little gift, and man, this really made my day. You know, he said, I want to send you a little something. So viewers who I see have been on the show for a while, commenting for a while, who I come to trust, I say, okay, you know what, send me something. He sent me some, and of course I thought, what else is it going to be? Cigars, you know. So I get the package, and I'm shaking. That doesn't sound like cigars. I know that sound. It sounds like a bunch of matches, you know. So I open it up, and thanks for your hard work, and keep on smoking, Snook Ajab. And look at that. 3 beautiful boxes of Swan Vesta matches, my favorite. And, you know, that just put a big, it puts a big smile on my face, because it shows that you really do watch the show, that you pay attention. You know, that's a great gift. Thank you very much, and they will go to very good use. Absolutely, of course. So, all that being said, let's move on. Jimster 10. Bloody great video once again, the RH video. Dew Point, who would have known? My wine has been stable at 63 to 63.5 degrees at 66 RH for the past 2 weeks. I've left the drain hole open in fear of this problem, the dew point, but now I'm going to plug it knowing that my dew point is at 12 degrees Celsius or 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Lucky for me, my housing isn't freezing cold. Found this website. Okay. Well, that's your dew point on the cold side, inside your Wynador. But if you keep your Wynador at 63 degrees, you have to worry about the heat, the dew point on the hot side, on the outside. You know, if your Wynador is at 63 degrees with around, what did we say, 65% relative humidity or something like that, I believe it was 75 degrees outside, and you start getting condensation. So remember, you know, I see what you did, and you're judging and say, oh, well, with the temperature it is outside, my Wynador has to drop to 53. Fine, but keep your Wynador at 63, and how hot does it have to get outside for the same thing to happen? Okay? So keep that in mind. Neil Brace. I smoked so many aged cigars in the last 15 years, and I can say I wasted a lot of money in aged cigars from auctions in London. Why I say that is because every time I smoke one of an old cigar, aged, it just works as an appetizer for me, never satisfied with flavor or strength on them, except the Cohiba Maduro 5 from 2008. Otherwise, most other cigars are just flat. With my conclusion about the aged Cubans, I sold all of my 80s and 90s collection, big names with bad quality at that time, to new smokers on FOH. What a guy. What a nice guy. Fucking. Well, there's an admission for you. Neil Brace, everybody. And I think the new Cubans are much better than the aged ones. Just my opinion. I love what you do. Well, you know, listen, here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, but... And there are cigars that can go flat, and flat, you know, listen, here's number one. You like strong, and you like a lot of flavor. You like that punch. You don't, and I'm not, listen, this is your preference, and that's fine. You don't like aged cigars, you know? But calling them all flat, they're not all flat, okay? There's no way all of your aged cigars were flat. You know, flat is in a way, flat is up to determination. You know, it's like, what do you mean by flat? You know, here's what I think. You don't go into aged cigars expecting to get out of them what you get out of brand new cigars. It's a completely different experience. I happen to like both. Newer cigars are much punchier, they're much stronger, they have a lot of flavor, okay? But they lack complexity, they lack finesse, you know? There's just a lot of amazing things I find in aged cigars that aren't present in new cigars. But I won't go smoke an aged cigar if I feel like, you know, I need something to really, you know, really relax and something really strong. It's just not going to happen. You know, after 10, 15 years. Another thing is what I explained in my first aging video. You know, all about aging, the whole, how the process works. The theoretical science behind the process. And you have different stages, you know. In the beginning, after the sick period, after the first year, you get into the second stage, and during that time, cigars actually get stronger. Not all, but many actually will get a little stronger. Flavor will develop. More new flavors are being created than are being lost. But after a while, you enter the second period where that turns around. More flavors are being lost than can be created. You know, cigars are running out of gas. But at the same time, tannins start to break down. These tannins create batches of new chemicals, which after many, many years, react to create all new flavors, sometimes very complex flavors. Now, it's hard to say with any given cigar when you're going to be in what period. You can estimate it. please watch that video if you haven't. You can see what I'm talking about. I recommend to many of my viewers that if you don't want to wait 15 or 20 years for a great aged cigar, then smoke your cigars before they enter second maturation or the third period. There are 4 periods: sick period and 3 maturations. Okay? Final maturation takes a long time to get around to. That whole period during the time where tannins are breaking down, nothing new is happening. Those cigars have to be left alone just as if they were in their sick period, to tell you the truth. They got to just sit there. You know? Some will be great. You'll smoke some, they have enough flavor. But a lot of them will be like, you know, what's to be told is, if you wait another 5 years, will they be great or will they just be dead? You don't know. You just don't know. So, like I said, aged cigars, it's something completely different. And you know what? Maybe you just don't like them, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If you don't like them, then don't smoke them. You know? So, nothing wrong with that at all. I'm glad you like the show. And, you know, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, you know, to me, you know, that's what you like. That's what you're saying you like. Strong, lots of flavor, and that's not something you're going to find on 20-year-old cigars. Well, the lots of flavor part, I found plenty of 15, 20-year-old cigars with lots of flavor. Strong, you know, they tend to lose their nicotine content. But to me, smoking cigars is really all about flavor. You know, cigars was generally never meant to be about getting blasted or you know, smoking incredible amounts of nicotine. In fact, cigars have relatively low amounts of nicotine, so let's see, what else? You know, and another one here from Hakan, and I'll just go right into the second part. If I remember correctly from your very first aging stuff, you said, in my own interpretation, that aging cigars changes the flavor profile and helps make a cigar smoother, and that each maturation stage will bring something new until you get to the 5th stage when it starts to go flat. Well, no, not really. First of all, there isn't a 5th stage, unless you want to call the 5th stage death. But there is really no death. You know, some cigars just don't age well. You know, you can keep a box, and yeah, they just won't taste good. It's what we call flat. They really have nothing interesting going on. Flavor is at an all-time low. You know, no, regardless of how they're stored, even if they're stored great. You know, so it really depends on the blend and how good the cigar was to begin with. But there are 4 stages, like I just said. The sick period, which we call year 1, you know, day 0 to year 1, and then 3 other maturations, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And again, no, I did not say that every stage offers something new. In every stage, something different is happening, but I'll say it again. That 3rd stage, 2nd maturation, that stage is where the cigar is, in fact, losing flavor as tannins are breaking down, and it takes so goddamn long for those tannins to break down to finally become all these smaller chemical components known as conagers, where they start mingling with each other, creating new flavors. And that's where you get into 3rd maturation, or the final period.